Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Daenerys 3, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 4,243 words long, and is told from the perspective of Daenerys Targaryen, who is 25 years younger than Rhaegar and 8 years younger than Viserys. In this chapter, Daenerys learns to embrace her life in Drogo's Khalasar, and stands up to Viserys for the first time. Afterwards, when Drogo arrives to have sex with her, she rides him instead of being taken from behind and becomes pregnant at age 14. Daenerys looks out for the first time onto the vast, empty, flat plain of the Dothraki Sea, with Ser Jorah Mormont beside her. Daenerys sees she has outdistanced the rest of Drogo's Khalasar, who are still climbing the ridge behind her. Among them, she can see her brother, Viserys, struggling with his riding. The sight brings back the memory of Illyrio Mopatis offering to let Viserys stay in Pentos as his guest. Viserys had refused and insisted on coming with the Khalasar to ensure that Drogo would give him the army that he promised. Daenerys commands Jorah and the others to wait. Mormont comments that she is starting to sound like a queen, but Daenerys corrects him, calling herself a Khaleesi. As she rides out alone, Dany reflects on how the days of the journey have hardened her body. She no longer has open saddle sores, nor does she suffer unbearable pain after a day's ride. At first, Drogo would ignore Daenerys to spend his days talking, drinking, and racing with his blood riders, leaving her to eat meals alone or with Viserys and Jorah Mormont. Yet every night, Drogo would come and ride her from behind. She had been miserable until she had dreamt of a dragon that engulfed her in flame and cleansed her. After that, each day had been easier than the one before it, and she had found pleasure in the new sights of the journey, even starting to enjoy sex with Drogo. Once she is alone, Daenerys decides to dismount and take off her boots so she can feel the earth. Suddenly, Viserys is there, screaming and grabbing her. He is furious that she commanded him to stay on the ridge with the others. For the first time in her life, Daenerys shoves him back. For a moment, Viserys is shocked, but then the rage returns, and Daenerys sees that he intends to hurt her badly. But then, Drogo's whip catches Viserys around the neck and pulls him to the ground. Her handmaiden, Irri, translate for them as Drogo asks if Daenerys would like to see Viserys dead or disfigured as punishment for his attack. Daenerys declines, but tells them to take Viserys' horse and make him walk, an emasculating punishment among the horse lords. Viserys, now recovered enough to shout, orders Ser Jorah to kill the Dothraki and discipline Daenerys, but the exiled knight ignores him and agrees that Viserys should walk. Daenerys is amazed that she hit her brother and asks Jorah if she has woken the dragon in Viserys. Jorah replies her brother Rhaegar was the last dragon, while her brother is less than the shadow of a snake. Daenerys insists Viserys is still the rightful king, but when Jorah asks if she would want her brother as the king, she realizes that he would not be a good king. Even so, Daenerys remains convinced that the people of Westeros are praying for Viserys' return until Jorah explains that peasants only pray for rain, health, and a summer that never ends. Daenerys declares that Viserys will never be able to retake the Seven Kingdoms, realizing that she has known this for a long time. Viserys could not lead an army even if her husband gave him one. Daenerys races her silver ahead of Jorah and the others. It is dusk by the time she returns to the Khalasar. Daenerys imagines the laughter in the Khalasar when news spreads about Viserys. By the time her brother can return, everyone will know him as a walker. As she enters her tent, Daenerys looks at her dragon eggs, and for a moment, she sees a scarlet flames before her eyes. When she touches the eggs, they feel hot, which she attributes to the sunshine during the day. Daenerys remembers all of the stories about other magical creatures and wonders why there should not also be dragons. Her Dothraki handmaidens, Irri and Jiqui, tell her that dragons were all killed by brave men. However, her Lycian handmaiden, Dori, a former sex slave, tells Daenerys a story about a time when there were 2 moons in the sky, but one came too close to the sun and cracked to release the first dragons. The story ends by claiming one day the other moon will crack and the dragons will return. The other handmaidens make fun of the story, insisting that the moon is a goddess, not an egg. Daenerys sends Irri and Chiqui away, but orders Dori to stay with her for dinner. When Drogo returns, she takes him outside because Dothraki customs say everything of importance must be done under the open sky. When Drogo tries to take her from behind, Daenerys tells him that she wants to see his face and climbs on top of him. She rides Drogo as fiercely as she has ever ridden her horse. And in that moment of pleasure, Drogo calls out her name. On the far side of the Dothraki Sea, on her 14th name day, Daenerys' handmaiden Chiqui brushes her stomach and tells her that she is pregnant. And this is where Daenerys 3, A Game of Thrones, ends. Now this chapter introduces Ghostgrass, another apocalyptic event occurring in Planetos as described by Jorah. Down in the Shadowlands, beyond Ashai, they say there are oceans of ghostgrass, taller than a man on horseback, with stalks as pale as milk glass. It murders all other grass and glows in the dark with the spirits of the damned. The Dothraki claim that someday ghostgrass will cover the entire world, and then all life will end. Also in this chapter, if Viserys had just stayed in Pentos like Illyroy wanted, he probably would have survived. Since, as we'll find out in these next few Daenerys chapters, Jorah does an extremely bad job at keeping Viserys alive, unless this was on purpose. Now, the final piece of contention in this chapter is who was sending Daenerys these dragon dreams to keep her alive. When he was done, he would close his eyes and begin to snore softly, and Dany would lie beside him, her body bruised and sore, hurting too much for sleep. Day followed day, and night followed night, until Dany knew she could not endure a moment longer. She would kill herself rather than go on, she decided one night. Yet, when she slept that night, she dreamt the dragon dream again. Viserys was not in it this time. There was only her and the dragon. Its scales were black as night, wet and slick with blood. Her blood, Dany sensed. Its eyes were pools of molten magma, and when it opened its mouth, the flame came roaring out in a hot jet. She could hear it singing to her. She opened her arms to the fire, embraced it, let it swallow her whole, let it cleanse her and temper her and scour her clean. She could feel her flesh sear and blacken and slow away, could feel her blood boil and turn to steam. And yet there was no pain. She felt strong and new and fierce, and the next day, strangely, she did not seem to hurt quite as much. It was as if the gods had heard her and taken pity. Even her handmaids noticed the change. "Khaleesi," Chiqui said, "what is wrong? Are you sick?" "I was," she answered, standing over the dragon's eggs that Illyroy had given her when she wed. She touched one, the largest of the three, running her hand lightly over the shelf. Black and scarlet, she thought, like the dragon in my dream. The stone felt strangely warm beneath her fingers. She pulled her hand back nervously. From that hour onward, each day was easier than the one before it. Her legs grew stronger, her blisters burst, and her hands grew calloused. Her soft thighs toughened, supple as leather. Now, did Quaithe send that dragon dream, or was it someone else? That's about it for Daenerys 3, A Game of Thrones. In the next video we'll cover Bran 4 and continue from there. Now, here are the differences between the HBO TV show and book. In the book, Daenerys orders the Khalasar to stop, not because she feels sorry for the slaves, but because she is awed by the sight of the Dothraki Sea. In the show, Ricardo seems to be based on Drogo. Meanwhile, in the books, it is Daenerys who makes Viserys walk after he attacks her. An additional scene in the show has Ser Jorah and Ricardo discuss Dothraki weapons. Irri then appears and announces Daenerys' pregnancy. Jorah then goes off to inform Varys. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.